forecast tonight, South Korea suspects that 2 drones recently found near the inner Korean border are from the north, raising questions about the country's air defenses amid heightened military tensions in the region. April is likely to be a tough month for already strained Korea-Japan ties. There are talks that Tokyo is set to announce a review of its history textbooks, and the Abe administration may backtrack on its landmark apology to the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. Plus, a powerful magnitude 8.2 quake hits off Chile's northern coast, killing at least 5 people. These stories and more next on Arirang News at 8. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Wednesday, April 2nd here in Seoul. I am Yoo Ji-hye. We begin this evening with the possible spying activities of North Korea. The South Korean military has tentatively verified that 2 drones they found near the inner Korean border in recent weeks came from the communist state. The unidentified vehicles are likely to have taken photos of capital Seoul and even the presidential office. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
Early investigations show the unmanned drone that crashed into a South Korean border island on Monday is from North Korea. The presidential office of Cheongwade presumes the unmanned vehicle to be from the north, as it was found after North Korea fired scores of artillery shells in the waters south of the northern limit line as part of a live-fire military drill. South Korea's defense ministry is continuing its analysis of the drone and is devising contingency plans to shore up the country's air defense. Military and intelligence officials are known to have concluded that the drones were assembled and developed in North Korea for reconnaissance purposes and was flown in from the north. The light blue drone was found on Baekneungdo Island just south of the disputed Western Sea border between the 2 Koreas. The drone is 183 centimeters long, almost 2.5 meters wide, and weighs around 12.7 kilograms. There was also a small digital camera installed on its body.
Drones can be used for reconnaissance missions with cameras attached. If the unmanned vehicle is loaded with explosives, it can also be used to bomb targets.
U.S. experts analyzed several photos of the drone's wreckage that were published in South Korean media and said the drone appears to be well past its prime and could even be considered an antique. Military and intelligence authorities say the unmanned vehicle is known to be similar to another drone that was collected from Paju City in Gyeonggi-do Province, south of the demilitarized zone on March 24th. South Korea's military intelligence authorities are collaborating on the investigation. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Amid more saber rattling by Pyongyang against Washington, a key U.S. official has blamed North Korea's big brother, China, for sticking to policies that have been unsuccessful in dealing with North Korea. Yoo Di-an has more.
The United States top point man on Asia says China is still struggling to set a clear priority in terms of its strategy towards North Korea. Speaking during a conference call hosted by the Asia Society, Daniel Russell, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, laid out 2 contradicting imperatives faced by Beijing. One is the maintenance of stability on its border, and the other, ending North Korea's quest for nuclear weapons capability. He added that while China continues to hold on to its coaxing tactics towards Pyongyang that proved to be futile, he said Chinese leaders are starting to realize that they need to put China's own national security interest in ending the nuclear program above anything else. The veteran diplomat then urged Pyongyang's traditional ally to take further steps to convince North Korea towards denuclearization. The comments come as North Korea continues to ramp up its anti-U.S. rhetoric. Speaking in front of the commanders of the North Korean People's Army on Tuesday, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accused the United States of ignoring its good intentions and generosity, and of trying instead to annihilate and isolate the country and crush it by using military force. Kim added he would not accept the U.S. policy towards his country and demolish it completely. Pundits expect Pyongyang to carry out more provocations this month as it's set to celebrate the birthday of late national founder Kim Il-sung and the foundation of the North Korean military. U.S. President Barack Obama is also set to visit South Korea at the end of the month. Yurian, Arirang News.
In a move sure to worsen already strained Korea-Japan relations, the Japanese government is expected to bolster its territorial claims in a review of its school textbooks this week. While there are also new whispers that the Abe administration may backtrack on its landmark apology to the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Diplomatic sources in Seoul said Wednesday that Japan's education ministry will convene a meeting on Friday to release the screening results of its elementary school textbooks. The revised versions are expected to carry stronger claims over Korea's Dokdo Island. The island, which is physically closer to Korea in the body of water that divides the Korean peninsula and Japan, has long been a thorn in bilateral relations. The Japanese government initially planned to unveil the new textbooks last month, but postponed it ahead of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's first official meeting with President Park Geun-hye in The Hague to demonstrate Japan's sincerity to mend ties with Korea. But that sincerity is now once again in question. Ahead of his meeting with President Park, Abe pledged to uphold a landmark apology to victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. But Japanese opposition lawmaker Tatsuki Eda said at a seminar in Washington, D.C. Tuesday that the Abe administration still intends to review the Kono statement and issue a revised version sometime next year. Eda, who expressed concern about the move, added the new statement would contain Japan's official stance on war and draw international attention. The Japanese government reiterated Tuesday it does not plan on revising the existing apology, but that it will verify the way in which the statement was composed. While Korea and Japan were expected to hold working-level talks on the so-called comfort women issue this month, the chances of such a meeting taking place now appear slim. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And in another move by Tokyo that is putting neighboring countries on edge, for the first time in almost 50 years, Japan is scrapping its self-imposed ban on exports of weapons and military hardware to assume a larger role in regional security. Our Kim Hyun-bin has this report.
Japan is easing self-imposed restrictions on weapons exports, known as the Three Principles, that have been in place since the late 1960s. In a bid to take a more active security role in the region.
This new principle draws on what the previous three principles sought to achieve, while allowing for the movement of defensive arms overseas in accordance with the security environment at hand.
The changes have China in mind. They aim to increase Japan's influence in the region by helping countries currently embroiled in territorial disputes with China. As expected, Beijing has expressed concern about the move.
We request that the Japanese side learn lessons from history, earnestly respond to regional countries' strong concerns about the relevant issue, follow the trend of history, take the path of peaceful development, and do more things that are conducive to the region's peaceful and stable development.
Korea's foreign ministry also had a word of caution for Tokyo.
Neighboring countries may be concerned about the move, so the Japanese government should enact the changes as transparently as possible.
Japan has tried to reassure its neighbors by saying the exports of weaponry will mainly focus on non-lethal defense gear, such as mine detectors and patrol ships. Analysts say the ban removal will open up new markets for Japanese defense companies and will make it easier for them to join multinational development projects for new weapons systems. While there will be changes, there will also be restrictions. The new guidelines will allow for the exports of weapons only to allies and partners that agree not to sell them to third nations without Japanese approval. The Three Principles were adopted back in 1967 and prohibited arms sales to communists, countries that were under UN sanctions, or in armed conflicts. It later expanded to include all weapons exports. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Yoo Ji-hye for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on Arirang TV.
move aimed at fostering startups is part of the government's 3-year economic innovation plan. Korea's benchmark Kospi surpassed the 2,000 mark at one point for the first time this year, backed by assurances about solid economic data from here and abroad. Although the market closed at 1997, just below the 2,000 level, it gained 5.25 points, the highest in 3 months, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq gained 8.5 points to over 557. Analysts say shares in the coming weeks will be affected by a number of factors, one of them being a Samsung Electronics performance report that will be released next week. The U.S. jobs report coming this Friday is another. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency ended at 1,056 won against the greenback. The Korea's top economic policymaker has made a move that is expected to boost policy coordination with the nation's central bank. Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok on Wednesday paid a visit to Bank of Korea and met with new Governor Lee Ju-yeol to congratulate him on his inauguration. There, Hyun relayed his hopes to create harmony in terms of economic policies and stay on the same page with Lee over current economic conditions at home and abroad. The two economic policymakers agreed that while the domestic economy is on track to recovery, the U.S. Fed's stimulus tapering and the slowing Chinese economy could hurt the momentum. Pundits point out that it's unusual for a finance minister to visit the BOK to meet with its chief. South Korea and the United Kingdom have agreed to enhance their bilateral cooperation in the financial sector. During talks in London, the two sides also discussed ways to finance funding for Korea's reunification when it happens. Our Song Ji-sun has the details.
Senior financial officials from South Korea and the United Kingdom gathered in London Tuesday to strengthen the two countries' financial ties. Chaired by the chief of Korea's Financial Services Commission, Shin Jae-yoon, and Lord Mayor of the City of London, Fiona Wolf, officials from Seoul also suggested channeling loans from international financial institutions to help North Korea, prepping for reunification in the future.
It's crucial to secure enough funding for the construction of highways, ports, factories, and energy infrastructure in North Korea when the two Koreas unite. We need cooperation for the international financial community to ask for loans for those projects.
The forum was a follow-up to President Park Geun-hye's state visit to Britain last year. The two countries also pledged to seek new investment opportunities by jointly exploring the Asian and African markets,
providing us with the opportunity to share best practice and also seek to consider how we can cooperate on financing infrastructure into third countries.
Both sides also share their views on consumer financial protection and financial supervision, along with turning Seoul into a trading hub for Chinese yuan to take full advantage of Korea's geographical location. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The Korea's Trade Ministry will hold a second round of preliminary talks in the coming days on joining the U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, starting with the United States this week. Korean trade representatives will meet with their U.S. counterparts in Washington Thursday, followed by more talks in Ottawa, Canada on Monday. The additional discussions are intended to help Korea determine whether it will formally join in TPP negotiations. Korea's Trade Ministry says it will make a final decision on its participation during the first half of this year after assessing the possible economic impact. The trade pact currently involves 12 countries. And when it comes to innovative ideas, Korea's Electronics and Telecommunications Research Institute is without competition. For the third straight year, the institute was ranked the world's #1 innovation center by U.S.-based Research Institute. Na Young-kyung tells us more.
One of the world's leading business patent databases, IPIQ, says Korea's Electronics and Telecommunications Research Institute has maintained its status as the #1 innovation center in the world. That's among some 300 government agencies, institutions, and universities around the globe, assessed by the IPIQ for their innovation drive and ability to collaborate with other organizations.
They've outperformed the competition on developing patents around the hottest technologies in the space right now. We call it innovation cycle time, and ETRI is winning in this area by producing patents in some of the most relevant, hottest sectors.
The state-run eatery based in Daejeon took the top spot this year with a patent count of nearly 900. That total is 85% higher than that of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the second-best organization on the scorecard. Aside from eatery, the only non-American organization in the top 10 was Taiwan's Industrial Technology Research Institute. The eatery has earned patent royalties totaling around 160 billion won, or roughly 150 million US dollars over the past 5 years, chief among them being patents related to the 3G mobile telecommunications technology. The Science and ICT Ministry says eatery's achievements are a testimony to Korea's information and communications technology prowess and proof that the country can succeed in building a creative economy, President Park Geun-hye's key administrative goal. A government official added that it will continue to help the institute focus more on the quality of Korea's patents from now on. 나현경, Arirang News.
Let's check on some of the stories making headlines on the global front, from the massive earthquake off the coast of Chile to General Motors CEO testifying before Congress. We go live to Paul Lee at the News Center. Paul, let's start with the quake that shook South America earlier today and the subsequent tsunami. How bad is the situation there?
At least 5 people have died and tens of thousands of people have been displaced since the initial 8.2 magnitude quake Tuesday evening. However, all tsunami warnings, alerts, and watches for Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and Panama have been lifted. For more on the natural disaster, our Shin Se-min reports.
Please just help us.
It was very strong. It was very long. Everything moved. All we could do was pray with our daughter.
A magnitude 8.2 earthquake struck off the coast of northern Chile Tuesday evening local time, causing landslides and prompting authorities to issue a tsunami warning that forced those in coastal areas to evacuate. The U.S. Geographical Survey said the quake centered 98 kilometers northwest of the Chilean mining port of Iquique, 20 kilometers deep in the Pacific Ocean at 8:46 p.m. Tuesday. The Chilean president has declared 3 northern regions hit by the quake as disaster areas. Waves of up to 2.1 meters were reported earlier in some areas. And power is still out for thousands of local residents in Chile, and some roads have been cut off due to landslides. In the hours since the earthquake, multiple aftershocks have rattled the region, including at least one in the magnitude 6 range. Asia may also feel the effects, as Japan's meteorological agency warned that high waves triggered by the quake in Chile could reach Japan by early tomorrow morning. Here in Korea, the agency expects that the eastern coastal regions will see the effects Thursday morning and the southern and western coasts in the afternoon. That said, the Japanese agency doesn't yet know how big the waves will be. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And Paul, speaking of natural disasters, let's turn now to Japan, which is still recovering from the deadly earthquake and tsunami 3 years ago. We hear that for the very first time since the nuclear fallout, authorities have finally given the all-clear for some residents of the affected area to return home.
That's right, GA. The evacuation order for the small village of Miyakoji was lifted Monday local time. The area, located some 20 kilometers away from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, had been off limits to most residents since March 2011 following the triple meltdown at the power plant. It's a major milestone for the some 355 residents of the area, many of whom had been hoping to return to their homes. The 2011 crisis had forced more than 160,000 people residing near the Fukushima plant to evacuate. Around a third of them are still living in temporary housing as Japan continues to complete decontamination work. The projected $30 billion cleanup of radioactive fallout throughout the Fukushima prefecture is behind schedule and is not expected to achieve Tokyo's radiation reduction goal in the long term.
And turning to the crisis in Ukraine, we hear NATO foreign ministers gathered in Brussels to discuss Russia's fate. What was their final say?
The North Atlantic Security Alliance voted to suspend all civilian and military cooperation with Russia in response to his annexation of the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea. A joint statement said political dialogue could continue through the NATO-Russian Council in order to find a way out of the crisis. NATO chief Anders Fogh Rasmussen called the takeover the greatest threat to European security for this generation.
Through its actions, Russia has undermined the principles on which our partnership is built and has breached its own international commitments. So we cannot go on doing business as usual.
Rasmussen also rejected earlier reports that a battalion of Russian troops had been pulled back from the eastern Ukrainian border. Meanwhile, Ukrainians will feel the pinch in their gas bills. Russia's energy firm Gazprom announced it will charge 43% more for gas, scrapping a previous discount. Gazprom says Kiev's unpaid gas bills to Russia stands at $1.7 billion US.
All right, Paul, lastly, to the CEO of General Motors' apology, what does she have to say before Congress?
Well, GM's new CEO, Mary Barra, testified in front of Congress earlier Tuesday, where U.S. lawmakers grilled her on why it took 10 years for the auto giant to recall vehicles with faulty ignition switches that have been linked to at least 13 deaths. Their problem has been identified in some GM models such as the Chevrolet Cobalt and Saturn Ion, which can unexpectedly turn off engines, as well as leave airbags, power steering, and brakes inoperable.
I find that statement to be very disturbing as we do this investigation and understand it in the context of the whole timeline. If that was the reason the decision was made, that is unacceptable. That is not the way we do business in today's GM.
General Motors has also so far recalled 2.6 million cars because of the default. With less than 3 months under her belt as GM's chief, Barrow extended her sincere apology to everyone affected by the massive recall and promised GM will do the right thing. Barrow faces further questioning by a Senate committee on Wednesday. GA?
All right, Paul, thank you very much for that update. We'll see you back in just about 2 hours. Let's get a check on the forecast with our Kim Bo-kyung in the studio. And Bo-kyung, it was a bright sunny day here in the nation today. I hear that it's going to be a different story tomorrow.
That's right. We may get to see rain or cloudy skies and even snow in some regions. Taking a look at the current conditions, the central regions will gradually be at the edge of a high pressure front, which is why we're seeing clouds move in. A pre-heavy snowfall watch has been issued on the mountains of Gangwon-do province, which could get 2 to 7 centimeters of snow. And the central regions, including Seoul, will see less than 5 millimeters of precipitation, so it won't be much. But keep in mind that the rain will come with strong winds. After this round of spring showers, average daytime highs in most parts of the country will drop to the mid-teens, which is about 10 degrees lower than today. As for tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at 9 degrees and tops out at 15 in the afternoon. Gwangju and Busan won't get any rain tomorrow and reach 19 degrees. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon makes it to 16 degrees, while it will be a cloudy day on Jeju. Dokdo and Mount Kumgang will top out at 13 and 5. That's all for Korea, and let's take a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates in our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.